Welcome back to the NextGen Prophets Podcast. I'm your host, your mentor, your big bro, Michael Velthuysen. And today we are going to be diving deeper into part 2 of this 4-part series, Kingdom Legacy. So come pull up a chair, grab that coffee, pull out that notepad or iPad, and let's dive in to today's podcast.
God has given us free will for a reason. He's given us leeway to make certain decisions for ourselves because we are human, and He's given us a free will, and He's not going to mind control us to do something we don't want to do. That is the purpose of our relationship. A healthy relationship, should not be based on you do as you're told all the time, exactly as you're told. That's not a healthy relationship. I choose to listen because I love that person. I choose to listen and to help them out because, I love them and I have a relationship with them. I can trust them and they trust me, and they trust and I trust that when they're doing something that I don't understand, it's for the benefit of our relationship. That's why I do those things. That's why I am obedient to God. Not just because He's my God, not just because He told me to, but because I trust Him. Because we have a covenant together, just as Abraham had a covenant with God, that even when he messed up, guys, Abraham messed up. He got this beautiful covenant with God, and he messed up. He sold his wife a couple of times. He went and did things he shouldn't have done. But because he obeyed the clauses, the terms and conditions in his covenant, God covered everything else. We're so worried about sinning, and we're so worried about doing everything wrong that we haven't stopped to look at the terms and conditions of our contract. We're more afraid of disobeying the law of man and the law of religion, that we haven't stopped to look at the law of the covenant that we have with Him. Jesus died to free us from the law of religion that kept us in bondage. That's what Jesus died for. He didn't want us to remain captive to the law. He fought for us, and with so many people. He fought against the devil and the Pharisees to free us from the restriction and the captivity of the law of religion, so that we may enter into a personal covenant with God, just as Abraham did. That we may operate according to His instruction and the destiny on our lives that He called us to. Now, I'm not saying let us not be obedient and be Christian. Let us abide by some of the law that's put in there. Don't go sleeping around. Let's not cuss. Let's make sure we are not worshiping other idols. There's some laws in there that I think are basic life skills and lifetime things we should be doing to live a healthy life. We should be doing that. But you're so worried about following those laws that you're not paying attention to the covenant. See, if you're obedient to the covenant, if you mess up, God can cover you because you are abiding by the covenant. But if you aren't abiding by the covenant, you've got nothing to cover you. So I need you to understand this shift in relationship with God. Because look, the expression Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Well, your destiny is not meant to be completed in a day either. God went through process to form you in your mother's wombs. He had to connect very particular bloodlines to make sure that you would be born with the gene sequencing and DNA that you have today. And He didn't go through all of that trouble of generations and millennia of combining bloodlines and DNAs and everything and sequences to produce you so that you could complete your destiny in a day and be done with you. That was not His purpose. He went through all of that trouble because He has a lifetime covenant with you that He desires for you to accomplish. So once you've got the terms and you've got all the terms and clauses understood, we need to set a course of action. We need to look at the conditions of this covenant. This is the second part. See, I couldn't read the entire chapter. It would have been too long. But in the second part, verses 9 through 14 of chapter 17, and a little bit, honestly, I'm going to reference a bit of chapter 18. It says, and God says to Abraham, after he's given him all of this promise of everything that he's going to do, everything that he's going to go through, okay, he's going to give you all of this. And he says, and God said to Abram, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, and you and your descendants after you through their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me, you, and your descendants after you. Okay, so this is my covenant. We're going to keep this. We're going to keep this. So every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generations, he who is born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in my flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people, for he has broken the covenant. This was one of the ways or conditions that God set for Abraham to prove that he was going to be obedient to this covenant, this contract that they had made. He had to be circumcised. Guys, the dude was 99 years old and he had to be circumcised. That just sounds a little painful. Okay? I need you to understand what that sacrifice meant for Abraham. Because the very first condition of your contract is an immediate act of obedience. As soon as God gives you, I'm going to give you all these things, he requires an immediate act of obedience. Later on in this chapter, and in chapter 18, we see God now says to Abraham, I'm going to give Sarah a son. He kind of laughs. He's like, he did what Sarah did. He just got to do it privately. He laughs at God like, haha, I'm like 99 years old and Sarah is also like 90 years old. And, how's that going to work, God? Like, I've already got a son. What's wrong with my son that I've already got? And God's like, no, it's got to be Isaac. It's got to be the son that you and Sarah will conceive. So he's like, okay, that makes sense. Whatever. I guess he doesn't really believe God, because in the next chapter, he's chilling out, and these two men come and visit him, and turns out they're angels, and they deliver the word and say again, you will bear a son. Sarah over here, Sarah laughs. They have this whole back and forth. But you know what happens? You know what Abraham did? What the two of them did right after that encounter? The scripture tells us they went and laid together. God says, you're going to get pregnant, conceive the son. So first of all, we got to sacrifice. Going to get a son. What are we going to do? Got to go get his wife pregnant. First condition, an immediate act of obedience. Immediate. We're not waiting around, guys. First thing, right after he has this conversation, he goes and he circumcises his entire household. His entire household gets circumcised. That's what happens. So you need to have a look at that very first instruction that God gives you. What is it? It's an immediate act of obedience. It's not a heart posture. It's not I'm just giving my life to you, God. No, it's an immediate act of obedience. Now, again, when we're looking at the beginning of our covenant with God, we're most likely looking at the first time you gave your life to God, or you began, you had that first encounter with him. So maybe your first act of obedience was, to stop listening to secular music entirely. You are not allowed to listen to non-Christian music. No more, ever again. Maybe you had to stop watching certain movies. Maybe you had to stop eating certain foods, drinking certain things. Maybe you had to put off or cut off certain people. There's an immediate act of obedience that God requires of you to solidify the covenant. Now, as long as you are doing and abiding by these conditions that God sets for you, you are in covering. You are in covenant. He can cover you. He can watch you. He can stop your foot from slipping on a stone and being snared. Like all this stuff that we hear about in the word, as long as we're in covenant, we are abiding by the conditions with our terms from our covenant, he can cover us, okay? So you need to find out what was your immediate act of obedience that God required you to do. And are you doing it? Sometimes, especially when we're been along the way for a little while, we get a little lackadaisical. Like, God told me to cut that thing off, and I've been really good about cutting that thing off. But now I've got kids or grandkids, and I've started to let it slip a little. Immediate act of obedience. That was the first part of your covenant. Don't break it now. Get back to it. Remain on it. This is your covenant. As long as you're doing these things, you are covered, right? So let's get back to that. Second condition is a test of faith. God's promise for a son, for Abraham's. So first of all, they had to be like, okay, I'm 90 years old without having a natural born son between the two of us. That's a major test of faith. And it's not for lack of trying, because Abraham really loved his wife. He really loved his wife. He didn't have many other kids besides Ishmael. That was it. And that was because Sarah told him to hang out with her maidservant Hagar and get her pregnant. That was the only reason they had that son. But Abraham otherwise was chill hanging out with his wife. So this was a major test of faith. 99 years of trying for a kid. At this point, I think you kind of get, we ain't having a kid. It's proven fact after 99 years. And now you want me to get pregnant again? You're telling me I'm going to get pregnant? Okay, God, this is an ultimate test of faith. But in a test of faith, they walked out that obedience. Right after that encounter with those angels, he goes and he does what again? What did I just say? Goes and lays with his wife. Guess what? In that act and test of faith, she goes and gets pregnant. You're going to have a test of faith. Now, look, a test of faith is not going to necessarily be immediate. For some of you, this might be a longer test of faith. Maybe it's a test of faith for healing. Maybe it's a test of faith for, maybe you need to conceive a child. The Lord says you're going to have a child and you've got to just actually work through the process of getting pregnant. Now, in Abraham and Sarah's case, it was a case of just laying down at the right time in the right place in the right season. But perhaps for you, your process of getting pregnant is IVF. Perhaps your process of having a child is going through adoption. Perhaps your process is through surrogacy. You need to find out what is your process and your test of faith that you need to go through to complete that promise that God has given you. What is your test of faith, guys? Because it is remember 2 Mentorship Meetup series back where we talked about faith to move mountains? Faith is the reality of the future that God has for you according to your destiny. So do you know what that picture looks like? And then do you know how you're going to get there? Find out and work through that. If you didn't catch that series, guys, go to our YouTube channel, catch up on that series because it was just mind-blowing, that series. I am still chewing on so much from that series of what God brought out. And I know we barely scratched the surface on the topic of faith. So make sure you go check out the Faith to Move Mountain series on our YouTube channel if you didn't already catch it, because it was powerful. The final condition is a personal sacrifice. Now, this is the part in chapter 18 and I think a little bit also 19 where, so they've got their beautiful, beautiful bouncing baby boy, Isaac, right? And at this point, Ishmael has also been cast out. So it's really just Isaac. Isaac's the only son that Abraham has got at this point. I believe he's around 12 or 13 around this time frame. So that's like 12, 13 years growing with this child, building pictures of the future of this child. And then God comes for that personal sacrifice. And he says, I want you to take your son of promise that you faced so hard for. 99 years of infertility. Y'all think your 10 years of infertility, 15 years of infertility were hard? Imagine 99 years. 90 years of infertility. That son that you worked so hard for 90 years of infertility. The only son that you have. Take that child up to the mountain and sacrifice him to me. Now, God's process of sacrifice, by the way, was quite official. They're like, there was no coming back from that on how you sacrificed in that day and age. Like, it wasn't like a little simple stab to the side and you could like bandage it and heal eventually. No, it was permanent. That son that you battled through 90 years of infertility for, the only child that you have because you have to cast out your other one and he's probably dead. So this is your only son that you have living, that you travailed for that many years. You finally got the answer to your prayers after 90 years. You're going to go kill it. You're going to go get rid of it. And you're going to go sacrifice it on that altar. A personal sacrifice. God's going to require something of you that is quite personal. He's going to require you to sacrifice something that impacts your life, that impacts you as a person, that is permanent. Permanent. See, that test proved just how much Abraham truly was committed to God. That proved to God just how much that covenant between the two of them meant. Because God's covenant was what? What was that covenant for? That you will be a father to nations and kings will come from you. So Abraham had so much faith in the covenant of God that said that I am going to have many nations come from my bosom, come from my seed. That I'm willing to sacrifice the child that I finally got after 90 years of infertility. I'm willing to lay him down. And he travailed. Make sure, no mistake. When you read that scripture, I don't know about you, but I get the sensing that he really wrestled with that. That was not easy. Even up to that moment, he barely spoke to Isaac because he was so trying to get himself ready for that. He's like, God, I'm warring with myself right now, but I trust you. I trust in our covenant. I trust in our contract. I trust in our process together that you would not ask me to give up something this personal, this dear to me, that is so integral to our covenant if you did not have another plan. So I'm going to trust you on that. I'm going to abide by our covenant. God, remember our covenant. That is the final condition of your covenant with God. He's going to require a personal sacrifice, and it's going to cost you. It should hurt. It should cause you to wrestle with your flesh. It should cause you to question your faith, because at that point, are you doing this for the benefits of your contract? Are you doing this because of what you get out of it? Or are you doing this because you're committed and you're in a relationship with God? That is the difference between a contract and a covenant. See, contract is give and take. Covenant is relationship. We're in a relationship with God. And if you want to understand the power of kingdom legacy, you need to start by first understanding the power of covenant relationship with God. Because once you understand covenant relationship with God, well, death has no power over you. Poverty has no power over you. Sickness has no power over you. Because of Jesus's relationship with Lazarus and Lazarus's relationship with Jesus, he could walk up to that tomb and say, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus heard his voice, and he came up off his deathbed, and he resurrected, and he came alive, and they removed those grave clothes from him, and he's as if he was never, ever sick. Because of that relationship, because of that covenant that the two of them had. He could get up out of that grave after being dead for many, many days. His body had probably started decomposing. And because of his covenant with God, he came out there healthier than he had ever been, with no signs of death on him. That is the power of covenant relationship with God. And if we want to walk in power, if we want to walk in faith and miracles, we want to walk in our destiny, guys, we need to understand this. Without relationship, without covenant relationship with Jesus, with our Heavenly Father, we've got nothing to offer. So let us make this shift within ourselves and in our mentality that our God is very deliberate about relationship. He's very deliberate about why he chose you, when he called you, and what he called you to do. He's very deliberate about what he's promised you and what he's asking of you to do. He has called you for such a time as this, that you may complete the destiny that he placed on your life, that you may be accomplishing the covenant that he started all those years ago with Abraham because you are one of his descendants. So let us take on this covenant. Let us revisit covenant and let us break free of the restriction that the devil has placed on us by saying, we don't know what our destiny is. I don't know what I'm called to do. Yes, you do. It's just the winds and waves came and the devil came and he tried to tell you different. So let us push that aside and break free of this restriction and realize you've been called, you have been chosen, and you have been destined for the call in your life. So guys, we are going to wrap up here with part 1. I will see you guys next week for part 2. For those of you who have joined us here in the breakout room, I will be here to answer any questions that you have before I do have to get running. But make sure that if you have not already booked your free prophetic consultation, guys, go ahead and do that. That's where I'm going to give you some impartation. That's where we're going to pray for you. That's where we're going to answer questions. I'm going to mentor you and help set you up and help you find a place to belong, because that's what we do here in this tribe. As you're discovering your covenant, you need a community who's going to help protect that covenant as you figure out all your terms and conditions. Because there's a false lawyer out there who's going to come to you and tell you how he thinks you should abide by that covenant. The devil's going to come to you and say, well, you know, the law says this, and I know you think you've got that, but if you read this fine print and you interpret this, this is what that means. And he's going to try and confuse you, as he's already done. And what this tribe does and what we do well is we stand in that gap very well. And we say, look, I know the devil's trying to tell you that, and you know, there may be a case of that somewhere, but that is not your case. Take this time, read it through, have a conversation with the man who drafted up that contract in the first place. Because I guarantee you, what that snake is saying is not what your father is saying. That's what we do here as a tribe. So go to www.myprophetictribe.com. Go ahead and book that consultation link, book that button, set it up so that we can consult, so that we can talk, and I can continue to mentor you. Michael can continue to pray and impart to you. And we're going to release you into your destiny. So this is your big sister here in the NextGen Prophets, signing out.